Right.
George, is that you?
Martha, it is I. Who did you think it was? Your lover?
Far too late in the day. There's a freshly chilled martini in the shaker and dinner will be approximately 20 minutes.
Just as I like.
Don't do that. Not there, anywhere but there. Please, darling.
Sorry, I wasn't thinking.
What day?
You know these students, matrimonial law.
Not one of your favourite subjects.
It was a seminar on divorce. You think they could understand it?
Tedious in the extreme.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And how was your day? Was it to be expected?
It was tedious in the extreme.
Oh dear.
Except Alice came around.
Oh, Alice. How was she?
Flustered as usual. She burst in upon me.
Oh, Martha! Oh, my God! I just didn't know where to put myself. It was shocking. I was appalled when I found...
No, burst is far too strong a word. No, she sidled in, as Alice does.
Oh yes, I know that sidle.
Martha, I just had to see you. You're the first person I thought of. I just couldn't hold back any longer.
Why, what is it, Alice dear? You seem out of sorts.
I am completely out of sorts.
Sit yourself down. Gather your thoughts. Can I get you anything?
Well,
Tea. I always have tea at this time in the afternoon.
Ah, it was afternoon then.
Something after 3, if my memory serves me.
It's just so I get the full picture.
tea would be nice.
Well, if you'll excuse me,
No,
dear.
no.
But if you want tea,
No tea then.
something stronger, perhaps.
But it's only 2 in the afternoon.
I thought you said it was 3.
She got the time wrong. She was confused, edgy. She was
Out of sorts, you said.
precisely.
You are a wronged woman, Martha.
A wronged woman? Oh, where does that woman get her dialogue from?
That George...
She called me that. Oh, she mentioned my name in that tone.
That George, that husband of yours, he's a cheap, conniving Lothario.
Oh, really? Lothario? Oh, she called me that.
He's too timing you, Martha. It's been going on for months. Everybody knows. The whole campus knows.
I don't think everybody knows. I certainly don't.
As soon as I had the proof, I had to come and face you with it.
Proof as well. Oh, this is turning into some story, Martha. Would you like another?
Alice, what can I get you? A stiff one, by the look of it.
Oh, Martha, you poor dear.
Oh, now, you don't have to patronise me, you know.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just all of a dither. It was just so shocking. You always seem so permanent.
Oh, nothing is permanent. I learnt that on a Buddhist seminar.
Oh, you are taking it so bravely.
Well, I have no other choice, Alice, as I can hardly believe a word of what you're saying.
You said that to her.
Right to her face.
You socked it to her.
Well, I was not about to be bamboozled into believing campus chatter, now was I?
I trust you asked her to see this so-called proof of this affair with which I am being charged.
Of course. Alice, what have you heard about dear George?
Oh, you still call me dear George in the midst of this entire revelatory announcement?
Of course, my dear, and you always will be dear to me.
Infidelity not having been proven, I assume.
Why, yes, of course. It's always best to keep an open mind in these matters. So, Alice, come along now. You can't go around making wild accusations.
But it's true. Every last damn word of it.
What's true, Alice? You and George? No.
It started when you went on that expedition to Outer Mongolia.
Outer Mongolia?
Oh, Alaska. She meant Alaska. It just felt like Outer Mongolia. Alice never was very good on her facts.
I finally had to give in to his constant attention.
Oh, so it was me leading this extramarital roundelay, was it?
Apparently.
He was so persistent. Well, you know what he's like when he's aroused.
Not recently.
Not recently. You said that.
Oh, my poor dear. I was just being truthful.
But to admit that to Alice, of all people.
Well, I thought of her as my best acquaintance.
I couldn't hold back any longer. You've always been such a dear, kind soul. So innocent. So unaffected.
Martha, you are putting words into her mouth now. Cut to the chase, for God's sake.
I don't believe you, Alice. I do not know what has brought on this preposterous farrago of lies.
But it is true. Every last damn word of it.
You and George. George and you. Why, the very idea of it is quite upsetting.
Upsetting?
It makes my flesh creep.
Flesh creep. That's going too far, Martha.
Alice, what kind of a wild, erotic fantasy world are you living in?
A sordid, nasty, degrading one into which I have plunged, kicking and screaming, dragged there by your lascivious husband.
She said Alice actually vocalised those words.
Well, perhaps not verbatim, but she was quite worked up at the time.
So, how did you take this full frontal attack of such intense passion?
You're a sicko, Alice.
A sicko? Is that the best you could come up with in the circumstances?
My best shot on the spur of the moment. With your weak and pathetic attempt to break up our rock-solid marriage of nearly 30 years. It's all in your head, Alice. If George were really tempted to wander from the straight and narrow, he'd pick a far younger, far prettier, and far less challenging a bimbo than you, Alice, dear.
Nice touch. The condescension of Alice dear has just the right amount of put down for such a neurotic mess as Alice.
Another drink, George, although I see you've hardly touched the last one.
I have been gripped by your salacious expose.
Another martini?
Please, for I have a story to tell. I too had a visitor this afternoon,
You did?
and like you, it was Alice.
Came to see you?
Before she came to you, which may help explain things.
Tell me more.
She gushed into my office.
George, I just had to see you.
Does one gush into an office?
Really, Martha, this is my story now. I gave you license to tell your tale in your own inimitable fashion. Just mix the drinks.
Yes, oh master.
The most terrible thing has happened.
This is most unusual, Alice.
Frank doesn't love me anymore.
Frank has left you?
I didn't say that.
She's right, she didn't.
Look here. Whose story is this?
Just mixing the martinis.
Thank you.
He wouldn't leave me, he doesn't have the balls. No, it all came out over lunch.
You were lunching together?
He called a luncheon meeting with me.
Yes. You weren't in the staff diner. The roast was excellent today. Martha, that last detail about the roast, that was for you, not to Alice. I wouldn't have been so insensitive as to mention the roast to Alice.
He came back home, he called in between meetings, and he told me, in no uncertain terms, that he thought our whole marriage was a sham.
Whose isn't?
Really, George, you said that? Or was that wisecrack aimed at me?
That was to her. Ours isn't any.
Well, I sometimes wonder.
Is your marriage a sham then, George?
What? You see, she caught me out. I was trying to lighten things with my flippancy.
Oh, your well-known flippancy.
Does that give me hope?
No, Alice. What is all this nonsense about you and Frank? He loves you. You are rocks on the campus.
No, he's finally come out of the closet.
Frank is gay? He's admitted to having homosexual leanings after all these years?
After all these years? You mean you knew?
I was trying to put a handle on things to keep a lid on her emotions.
There's always been a problem in the bedroom area.
Bedroom area?
She may have been more explicit.
I always put it down to things. Emotional stress. Things like that. But now he's come out in the open and admitted he's been seeing someone for years.
My God. This is Frank. Frank, your boss.
My head of department. I always think the term boss has such a blue-collar feel to it.
Your boss.
All right.
There was more to this, wasn't there?
Oh, yes, because that revelation opened up the floodgates.
You see what this means now, George, don't you?
I can see it may have implications, yes.
About you and me, yes?
But there is no you and me, Alice.
Oh, but now there can be. Oh, what a fool I've been. Keeping myself faithful for the years. The kids, Nick and Holly. They're growing up. They're schooling. All the celebrations. Christmas, the presents, the holly and the bloody ivy. All for nothing. For a homosexual, a closet queen. But now, George, now my passions are on fire. The little talks, the confession, they've opened me up to the world. Oh, do you know the desire I've been holding back for you? Oh, George, my love god!
Love God? Come on, George. Your interpretation of events is becoming decidedly afternoon soup.
To cut a long tirade short. Alice, before you say any more, before you embarrass yourself further, I must just say that there is not, there has never been, and there never will be a you and I. I love my wife.
I should hope so too.
We are rock solid. Alice, I confess, we may have flirted, perhaps. You are not an unlovely looking lady. We may have dallied over the canapes at university get-togethers, and we may even have exchanged knowing glances over the hors d'oeuvre.
Flirted? Dallied? Knowing glances, George?
When the wine was flowing free and it went to my head, yes, I confess, we're living in a hothouse of emotions on this campus. It's all totally innocent, harmless.
Really?
Well, you know that, Martha. Why, you and Frank.
Frank? Oh, Frank and I? Do you really think that old queen and I would flirt, dally, exchange knowing looks together? Come on, George, get a grip. So, after all these revelations, what happened next? You can be a little crass, George, at times in your handling of women.
But you see what this means. It explains why she rushed over here and blurted out, what she blurted out.
The wounded, rejected lover seeks revenge on the poor, innocent wife.
She was trying to wrench us apart. To us. To George and Martha.
No, George, not yet. Perhaps later, when I've told you the rest of my story.
The rest?
Well, when I told you that Alice left in a flood of tears, that was not strictly true.
If you don't believe me, then believe this. It's a hotel bill for two.
Curiously enough, Alice, I can read. Well?
That's your husband's name on the top of the receipt for our night of passion.
My goodness, a whole night.
Oh, please, Martha.
And when was this?
When you took that trip to see your mother.
Well, the dates certainly match. Although why my husband should hire a hotel room for a... What did you call it?
A night of...
Yes! I remember what you said. I am not senile yet. Merely patronising.
Well, I suppose as a wounded, betrayed wife, I should expect a certain amount of bitchiness. How the hell should I know why your husband stooped to such devious means to disguise his adultery?
At least this figures with the kind of behaviour my husband might indulge in.
Indulge in, please.
Be quiet, George. This is my story.
Then you believe me?
I don't have to believe you, you stupid woman. This may prove adultery on behalf of my husband, but it sure as hell does not prove that you were the other whore.
But I was!
In your wet dreams you were.
Martha, did you have to do quite
Screw you, George.
Really?
Alice, face it. You are way past the stage of attracting even my husband.
But it's true! He's having affairs!
I know he is, you ludicrous woman!
Am I?
Of course you are, you poor stupid shit. You've never been able to pull the wool over my eyes. But Alice, you and I, and of course George, and his latest in a long line of blonde, leggy students, are the only ones who know. I don't know where you got this bill from, and I really don't care. But I am going to make sure, Alice, that you don't tell anyone else.
My God, the little woman strikes back.
Be quiet, George. Because you and I have to have a serious talk.
Oh my God. How could you?
She pushed all the wrong buttons. Or perhaps I mean the right ones.
But my silver paper knife. Couldn't have you used anything but my silver paper knife?
There are just some times when enough is enough.
That is an antique heirloom. Couldn't you have used anything else? I mean, to be used in such a sordid manner. That was totally thoughtless of you. Ridiculous.
Perhaps now you'll listen to my version of events. I shan't be addressing these two. The words anal and retentive were invented for them. Now, all melodrama apart, this is what really happened. First of all, I went to see George. At his own request, I might add. Well, George, what's all the urgency? I got here as quickly as I could get...
Alice, I had to see you.
Well, I hope this won't take long.
Frank doesn't love you anymore.
Well, that does come as a surprise. What's he done? Left me?
No, I didn't say that. He wouldn't do that, not like that. He hasn't got the wherewithal. No, it all came out over lunch.
Oh, so you had lunch together. How cosy. The thought of the pair of you nibbling your sandwiches together. And where did this little tete-a-tete take place?
He came back home.
And where was Martha in all of this, at one of her endless committees?
No, Frank called in on his way between meetings, and he told me, in no uncertain terms, that he thought your whole marriage was a sham.
Frank wouldn't say that. He wouldn't have the balls, I assure you. He certainly wouldn't say anything to you, George. And while we're talking about sham marriages, I should look at your own. From what I hear.
You're saying that my marriage is a sham?
You don't know, do you? You poor, pathetic creature.
Well, how does that give me any hope?
I'm not here to give you hope, George, because you're hopeless. And all this nonsense about Frank.
No. Frank has finally come out of the
Oh,
closet.
God give me strength. Frank doesn't have the conviction to be a homosexual, heterosexual, or any other kind of sexual. You boys, playing with those tools that God gave you to fiddle with while romance burns. Admit it, George.
There's always been a problem in the bedroom department.
Problem? Catastrophe, more like.
I've always put it down to emotional stress, things like that. But Frank has told me that he's been seeing somebody else for years.
Who are we talking about, George? You and your little male friend?
But you see what this means, don't you, Alice?
No, quite frankly, I don't.
For you and me.
And that was it. And that was it, the final straw. To imagine that this creature was lusting after me. Well, I suppose it showed some taste in his fantasies, but really, he rambled on and on. I couldn't listen, it was all too much. Frank and him, Martha and me, like some terrible mixed up menage a four. None of it making any sense. And in the end I had to say to him, now George, before you embarrass yourself any further, I think I should tell you that there is not, has not, and never will be a you and me. I love my husband. I needed to soften the blow somehow. It seemed best. He seemed so wrought. We are rock solid. Perhaps that was taking it a tad too far. No one will ever come between us. I wanted to say over my dead body. I had Frank where I wanted him, nicely trained. A tendency to go off the rails now and again, like today. But well, you know. George, you and I, we may have... I couldn't find the right words. I wanted to say, you leered and I let you. We may have flirted, perhaps. I wanted to let him down lightly. And then I left, leaving him with his head held high, with the feeling that he could return to Martha, tackle intact. And now, I suppose you'd like to know what happened when I went to see Martha. Or rather, why I went to see Martha. Oh, Martha, oh my God, I didn't know where to put myself. It was shocking. It was appalling when I found out. Well, they were her words. What was she doing? Preparing herself for the trial? What was she thinking? Crime of passion? A red mist came over me and the next thing I knew... ... Do you get the picture? So, on one hand, we have George. Poor, confused George, trying to score off Frank. But truth be told, both of them frightened to death of what their dicks might do, so they chopped them off, figuratively speaking. And Martha, whatever else Martha wants to say, she called me over. Well, Martha, what is it with you and George today? He calls me in and you call me over.
You've seen George?
He sent me a note of all things.
What about?
Us.
Oh my God. He's guessed. Well, that's it.
What's it?
Well, it's all out in the open now, isn't it?
What the hell are you talking about?
You and me.
You and I?
Oh, my dear, you always were the cleverer one. Yes, of course. You and I.
You and I, you and me, what the hell do you mean?
Well, you must have guessed how much I love you?
But that's ridiculous. It would be absolutely laughable if it wasn't so pathetic.
Pathetic.
Yes, pathetic. George seems to be having these strange fantasies about me, and now it seems so do you.
You and George? That's disgusting.
Well, I wouldn't go as far as saying disgusting, but it's distasteful, I grant you.
But he couldn't think. Well, I mean, you could imagine that.
I was not doing any imagining, and I don't know what George
But
was
that
thinking.
can't be.
It won't be.
No, but if I can't have you, he certainly won't.
Now, wait
You're
a
not
minute.
taking him away from me.
Hold on there.
I might easily leave him for you, but not the other way around.
Excuse me, Martha. None of this has anything to do with me.
Behind my back. Oh, if I can't have you, he certainly won't.
Martha, you're not listening to me.
Listen to you, you whore, tramp, trollop. I'll kill you. I'll murder you. Stealing behind. Tramp, trollop. It was all a terrible misunderstanding. The aberrations of the day finally caught up with me.
Some aberration. Hardly a justification for homicide.
And so what do you suggest, counsellor?
Well, seems to me that neither of us really wants to get mixed up in this sordid little affair.
That is, I concede, quite obvious.
And so, to avoid that, we must remove her.
Remove her? But shouldn't we?
No, Martha. At times like this, the shouldn't we clause doesn't apply. No, we must remove Alice from this scene and return her to her own scene.
Take her home, you mean?
Yes. I think she should have a latchkey or something on her somewhere. Have a look, would you? Yes. Now, Frank has a university committee meeting this evening, so he won't be home till quite a lot later. Home to... Oh, good. Yes, right. Home to find the body of his murdered wife.
Please, George, do we have to talk about Alice in those terms?
But just facing the facts, my dear. Home to find the body of his wife, who was planning to leave him for me.
Oh, but that's not true.
Oh, but it is a motive, you see. So, in his vengeance, he grabbed the nearest thing to hand.
Our silver paper knife.
No. Their stainless steel bread knife. Yes. The altercation took place in the kitchen. It was the aberration of a moment, my lord.
You are very good. You should have gone into law properly instead of struggling all your life with academia.
Anyway, under the shade of the old apple tree, we need to load this aberration into the old pickup. And then, how long is it till dinner?
Well, we can put it back for maybe half an hour. Have we time for another martini first?
We shouldn't really drink in front of our dead guest. And time is of the essence. No, give me a hand here, please. You take the ankles and I'll take the upper part. Oh, give me a hand. Thank you. Right.
Oh, my God, it's the phone.
We've got more important things to do. Don't answer it.
But if we don't answer it, it means that we can't be at home.
So our alibi is blown, you mean?
What are we going to do?
It does pose something of a quandary.
And this quandary's slipped through my fingers.
Right. You're right. We should answer the phone.
Hi there. This is George at Martha's residence. We're not able to answer the phone right at this moment. Why not leave us a little message, name and number, and we promise to get back to you as soon as possible.
Now they know we're not at home, unless you answer it straight away.
Hello, George. Martha?
That's Frank.
This is Frank. When you get back, can you give me a call? I know I called earlier.
He called earlier.
So really, this is some kind of follow-up call.
Why didn't you tell me he called earlier?
Well, it wasn't important.
Alice still isn't home, and it's not like her not to be here when I get back.
Not important. He's at home. He hasn't been at his meeting.
I called in here earlier and found her not here, so I got worried and called off my meeting.
What in tarnation were you thinking of, woman? You should have told me he's rung earlier.
It started with you, George.
Oh no, this has nothing to do with me, Frank.
That conversation we had about my friend. Only I suspected you got me wrong there. I got the distinct impression that you didn't believe I had such a friend.
Too right I didn't, mate.
Perhaps we ought to get things straight. Straight. That wasn't intended, I assure you. He really is a friend.
You don't say.
But to more important matters, I'm really quite worried about Alice. I fear she may have overheard and also misunderstood.
Too right, matey, she did.
I love my wife. I get the feeling she may do something stupid. So I called Ed, our security man. I explained about the conversation. He got really interested. Funny, he doesn't have a wife. Well, he sympathised.
I'm sure he did, you fool.
He's coming round to see you both.
He can't do that.
To see if Alice is with you and try and talk her out of it. He should be with you anytime soon. I'm worried sick. I want to get things sorted back as they were. Back to the old ways.